Thank you for joining us today for part one of our two-part series on a deeper look at anxiety. If you're listening for the first time, welcome. My name is Tiffany. I'm a licensed mental health counselor here with my co-host Kirk.
Hello, Kirk Vasshauer, Director of Crisis Response Services at Peace River Center.
And Kirk is a licensed clinical social worker. So we are here today to talk about mental health. This is a time where Kirk and I get together, we hang out, we spend some time together, and we talk about topics related to mental health and ways to reduce stigma. So we are talking today about anxiety. For a long time, we have wanted to dig into issues that are affecting our community and maybe people. They're experiencing things and they don't know what they're experiencing and they don't know how to move forward with feeling better. And so this is a time to learn. So today we're digging a little bit deeper into anxiety. We've talked previously about anxiety in general, but today we're going a little bit more in depth. So Kirk, when we think about anxiety, to recap from previous podcasts, it is a feeling of overwhelming nervousness and anxiousness. Right. So of course there are moments where there might be a life-threatening situation where anxiety would be absolutely appropriate in that moment, right? And you need those endorphins to fuel your motivation to survive.
Exactly.
But there are also moments where anxiety comes and it's not life-threatening. And the impulses and feelings that your body experiences, that fight, flight, or freeze, they're not needed to that extent to survive, and it becomes problematic.
Correct.
Right. And so we have this general idea of anxiety, but also there's some very specific diagnoses that are within that anxiety family. So tell me a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. The mechanisms for preparing us for the fight, flight, or freeze response is the same whether it's anxiety over losing your car keys as it is for somebody who's about to hit you with their car. I mean, the urgency is different, but the anxiety level can be similar physiologically. And so, yeah, those endorphins, that chemistry that gets spewed into your body helps you to prepare appropriately for whatever may come across. Now, everybody experiences anxiety. It can be a good thing, as we mentioned before, but we're getting more into the deeper end kind of anxieties where it is now debilitative and where you probably will need some professional assistance or guidance, sometimes medication. You don't always need medications for some of these disorders, but the medication can help kind of take the edge off, is how I like to describe it. Because some people don't want medication, and that's fine. Some people do want the medication. That's fine too. So some of the things that we talk about symptomatically in the categories, we've got generalized anxiety disorder, which we'll get into, panic disorders. I'm sure people have heard of panic attacks. Well, that's part of the panic disorder setup. All right. Then we have social anxiety disorders. It's a little bit different than the phobia, but there are phobia-related disorders as well, and we get into a long list of the various specific types of phobias, and we may hit on a few of those in our discussion today.
We're also going to dive into risk factors, treatments and therapies, and ways that you can help someone else around you maybe who's experiencing these symptoms. So starting off with generalized anxiety disorder, I think that's probably one of the ones that people, when they think of anxiety, this might be the first that comes to mind.
Right. And it's called generalized anxiety because often it's not due to one thing specifically. It is a result of that, just a persistent feeling of dread, and it can interfere with one's daily life. And it's not from that same experience. It's just overall stress about everything. People worry about stuff. That's going to happen. But this is, again, debilitating. We talk about does it impact one's ability to live, love, laugh, and learn? And if it does, then okay, let's take a hard look at what's going on here. So there'll be that consistent feeling of being wound up on edge, have to worry about everything continuously. and being easily fatigued, which makes sense because if you're always wound up and worried about something, your body's going to get tired,
Right.
and you're going to get worn down. So with that, the ability to concentrate on something becomes even more difficult. And in some extreme cases, the anxiety floods the system, the body system, and your mind to the point where you can be very forgetful and even forget your name. Like my name's simple, Kirk, K-I-R-K. It's like, woof, you can have a moment where you forget, what's your name?
Well, and I think especially with early adulthood, there's a lot of challenges that you're facing. For a lot of college students, they're living in a new environment. They're experiencing new stressors that they've never had before because of increased responsibilities. And this is a very real thing because if you are having difficulty staying focused, if you're having difficulties with sleep abnormalities, if you're so hyper-focused, for example, on studying, you can become, so easily fatigued if any even minor inconvenience happens or any minor problem happens because that particular stressor that's kind of you're fixated on is taking up so much of your energy. Anything else might seem overwhelming. Anything else might even seem like impossible. And so it's very common to have what we call in the field high levels of emotional reactivity. So really big reactions to something that may not really, justify such a big reaction because you're so tired from just surviving.
Right. And people often would complain about some physical ailments like headaches. Headaches are a good symptom that there's some extra anxiety there. Of course, you want to rule out any physical ailments or physical conditions that may be causing that. And in the absence of anything physical that's happened to your body, then headaches, muscle aches, stomach aches, unexplained pains and aches that somebody has. You see generalized anxiety disorder show itself in children much more in physical complaints because they don't have the language to describe what they're going through emotionally. So you'll hear, I have a tummy ache, or my head hurts, I have a boo-boo here on my elbow, those kinds of complaints from young children. That doesn't necessarily go away when we become adults, or even adults, or even in college years. It's there. We still get the headaches. The aches could still be there in some physical worries. And it can happen to anybody. It's not just, it's this particular group of people. This is some generalized anxiety can impact anybody. Sleep is often a good indicator that something's going on. The lack thereof is a good indicator, and also the over want of sleep, wanting to have more and more sleep. So the two extremes, something to kind of raise a red flag with. But to go back to what I was saying about, it can impact anybody. I remember going to Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina and I do some disaster behavioral health work. I go into places after mass disaster like that. And this one person, the team that I went with, we went to connect with another team. Well, that team leader seemed to be struggling. Very competent person, knows their stuff, but something was off with this person. And they had a heightened sense of restlessness, heightened sort of paranoia sense about them. And they had been there for a while, so they should kind of know the route back to their team. And they were driving around like they were lost. So disoriented in some sense, but had a hard time even concentrating on what they were doing. And so I remember we had to... the politics that were there too, but we had to gently kind of present this as we're worried about this person because there seems to be something going on. And she actually got some help, and it was beneficial because she was experiencing some overload in that situation. Now, that's an extreme case.
Yeah, but I think it brings up such a good point of even when you know the criteria and all the diagnostic information, sometimes when you're in it, you don't know you're in it.
Exactly.
And so when you think about, an average person who might not have, extensive knowledge about diagnostic criteria, what does that look like? I think that we all have stress. We all probably carry more than we should. I think that we live in a very, fast-paced environment, especially acclimating to campus. If you're a freshman or even a sophomore, you're surrounded by people
Right.
who have a couple of years on you.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of wanting to prove yourself, a part of, wanting to prove that you belong or asking, do I belong? So there's this level of maybe feeling alone, of maybe this is normal. Maybe this is what everyone is experiencing, because how do you know it's not normal
Right.
if you don't have a
Right.
baseline? And so when we think about generalized anxiety, this is not just I'm stressed about this one thing. This is I have this stress and it's not going away. And, typically what we look for as clinicians is it's been going on for about 6 months. And that's a long time. Change is
Right.
hard. And change, it takes time to learn something new, to adjust to a new job, to adjust to a start or an end of a relationship. Things take time.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And that's why in the diagnostic criteria to get a diagnosis, there are time frames in there. It doesn't happen just overnight or just within a week in some cases. It's okay, let's give this some time, because maybe you're trying to learn a new skill and there's going to be anxiety around it, and let's make sure, okay, it's not just the struggle of learning something new or growing into something. So yes, I'm glad you mentioned the time frame, because the time frame is an important factor here. So if it's not going away and it continues to impact, those abilities to live, love, laugh, and learn, then okay, 6 months down the road, I often think that might be a little bit long, but
Sure.
but it's what we've agreed to as a mental health community, that this is the benchmark. But it's important to start addressing those as soon as possible, because it helps rather entrench some bad habits, bad coping, maladaptive reactions. It's better to catch it as soon as possible, to start to unravel some of that and hopefully guide somebody to better coping.
Sure. And if you're a young adult, if you're a freshman or a sophomore, even, coming back, if you're just starting, the semester, of course things are going to be stressful. But, during midterms and even towards the close of your first semester, if things don't feel a little more anchored, if things don't feel a little bit more stable, absolutely, that might be a good indicator of, okay, maybe I can reach out for support. And that's not to say don't start earlier. I think prevention is key.
Yeah.
If you're struggling, why struggle alone, right? Reach out for support. There's help always available. You just got to know where to look.
Exactly. And I remember my freshman year in undergrad, it was so overwhelming. I was very excited. It's an exciting moment. So there's a different kind of anxiety there. But with the excitement, there were choices that needed to be made, because I got to pick my classes. And I was overwhelmed because there were so many classes to choose from. Some that I wanted I couldn't have, because they get filled up. You're a freshman, yeah, you get what's left. But I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, what am I going to do here? I'm planning for my future. I want to take some of these, but I can't because they're full. But so one of the things I did, I said, why don't I just copy what I did my senior year in high school as far as coursework goes? So I had a frame of reference to go back to, and so I structured my first semester of my freshman year, sort of that way as a leap board for the rest of my semester. It's like, okay, I need something here, something here, something here, and it came pretty close, but it gave me something that I had learned in high school. Hey, this is my coursework that was given to me, and now I had a choice to change it up, and did the best I could. But it helped kind of ease some of the anxiety, and it also lessened the stress of the overwhelming number of courses that were out there and available.
Yeah, you found a way to anchor yourself.
Yes, exactly. Anchor, right?
So then when we think about anxiety, right, so generalized anxiety, which we've talked about, then moving to the next category, we have something called social anxiety disorder. Now, social anxiety disorder, it's this intense, persistent fear of, being judged by other people, being watched by other people. And this could happen in a lot of different ways. Perhaps, You have a fear of public speaking. When you get up there, everyone's going to tear you apart.
Right.
Or, you have a fear of raising your hand in class, or you have a fear of being in new places. So just the feeling that you're being watched and you're being judged. And so being in these social settings. So, Kirk, whenever we think of social anxiety disorder, the symptoms are pretty similar.
They are.
Right?
They are. And again, all the anxiety disorders are going to have the general set of symptoms, but then you start to get into more specific. So where generalized anxiety, there is nothing specific. Now we're starting to get a little bit more specific as to what the diagnosis starts to target. And in this case, what we're talking about is social anxiety disorder. So it has to do with that fear of being watched, that fear of being judged by others. My clothes don't look right. Everyone's looking at me. And, a lot of people say, well, I don't care what people think. You do. Even if you're being that rebel, there's that sense of you want to either draw that attention to you or not. But it's for this situation, it's about that fear of them making fun of you and you not fitting in. And it's so predominant when you go from a very comfort space of high school now into college. In those college years and wanting to be a part of and having had this vision or expectation of what college life is going to be and then actually being there and it's not falling into place. Well, it's because we've got this image of something a little bit further. Again, it's a new skill. You're not going to have the mastery right away. You have to develop that. And everyone starts somewhere. Freshman year, there you go. And what helps in a lot of cases, and for my college years, I did not have the opportunity to be part of the Greek life. I don't know if you were part of that or not. That's your fraternities, your sororities. That helps with some of the transition because maybe you had a family member go through that, or maybe you're the first one and you're trying to figure it out too. But they kind of have their own little way of setting up things. Not everybody has the opportunity for those setups. You still have the same kind of setups you would in high school as far as, we got the group that loves to be part of sports and they're more sports-minded. You've got those folks over here that are much more academic-minded and get into technology and things like that. And people that like to read and get into poetry and theatrics, and so you find your niche, you find what you're comfortable with. Really, that's what part of high school, but definitely the first. I want to say your freshman year is really exploring a lot of that.
Sure.
And that definitely happened for me. I didn't have social anxiety. I was more of a risk taker. I went out there and put myself out there. But, as far as trying to figure out what I wanted in life was more about, I started off as a computer science major, so I wasn't anywhere near psychology at the time.
So big shift.
Big shift, right? So, that was a monumental change because the anxiety that came out of that decision-making was I was disappointing a lot of people because they were all rooting for me. I did a lot of computer work in high school and big focus. I was really thinking I was letting people down, but it came down to if I stayed with it, I might be letting my own self down, and so that created the change. With social anxiety, it's those other people looking at you. It's the fact that even that thought in my head was, someone's going to say, you chose a bad career or you made a bad choice here, was enough to make me worry. So the anxiety was there around making that choice. Social anxiety, it's watching having those people make. You're really fearing what everybody else is going to tell you. So you're going to hold yourself differently. May even have some stomach aches.
And even like that rigid body structure, talking and, I can, vividly remember my sister sharing with me that, one of her speech classes felt like she had cotton balls in her mouth because it's like her mouth was so dry and it's just, you want to talk, you have something to say, but, maybe an overly soft voice, you just can't get it out because of that fear.
Right. Or people have stomach aches before speaking, and they actually, vomit.
Right. And so I think that when we think about, well, how does this impact us, in a big picture way, if you have the fear associated with talking in front of people or putting yourself out there, with big risk comes big reward sometimes, right? How do you make yourself stand out? If you can't do that, that fear gets in the way. It can get in the way of work. It can get in the way of promotions. It can get in the way of, school and getting that grade, or even, putting yourself out there in sports or making friends or being who in your heart and in your mind you want to be. But this invisible fence is holding you back.
Right.
And it's hard to understand if you're not the one experiencing it. Because
Exactly.
it seems so easy sometimes for other people, but none of us know the internal struggles that someone else is going through.
If you enjoyed our show, please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're struggling with any issues regarding anxiety or any other mental health issues, you can reach us locally in Central Florida at 863-519-3744. Or if you're listening to us from another area, you can dial the national number 988.